Hello there and welcome. In the previous episode we started working on the fishing system, we created the fishing rod model, and we added a few animations for the casting and the pulling of the rod. So now that we have the fishing rod and the option to actually equip it, we also want to start working on the actual fishing system. So we're going to create an empty object and we're going to name it fishing system. Then we're going to generate a script with the same name. Now, because we only want to have one fishing system and we also want to access this fishing system from different parts of our code, we're going to make it into a singleton. So we're going to open one of the other singletons. We're going to copy this line over here and paste it inside. We're going to rename this part. And we also need the awake method, so it will actually check that there are no other fishing systems in our game. And this will make it into a singleton. Now, before we start adding code into the fishing system, we want to create a scriptable object that will be our fish data. So we're going to have different fish in our game. It can be whatever fish you like, and we simply need to store it inside a scriptable object because this will be a better way to deal with all of this data instead of just creating all of this fish inside the code and hard coding it. So we're going to create a new script and we're going to name it fish data. Now, because this is a scriptable object, this is just going to be the template to actually create a scriptable object. So we need to specify over here, create asset menu. Then we're going to give the name of the scriptable object. So fish data. And we also want to give the name for the actual menu. So fish data. And also the order will be 1. And we can see it over here. So we need to give the file name, the menu name, and the order. Now it can give us this error because it doesn't know which one is what. So file name will be this one, menu name will be this one, and order will be this one. Now we're going to change it into a scriptable object. So scriptable object. We're going to delete all of this. And inside we're going to have a few fields. So public string fish name, public game object inventory item, and public int probability. So this will basically be the chance to catch this fish. So this will be an integer. So if we say 20%, then there will be a 20% chance to catch this fish. So the fish can be a salmon, and then we create another one. It can be a tuna, and another one can be something else. And each one will have its own probability. Now, if you remember, we created this scriptable objects folder in the past, just so our scriptable objects are not mixed together with the regular scripts. So we're going to drag our fish data inside, and then we're going to create a folder for all the fish data. Now inside the fish data folder, we're going to hover to the create, and we're going to see this option over here, fish data. So this will create this fish data scriptable object, and we can name it, let's say, salmon. And over here, we need to provide the name, the inventory item that will be created when we catch the fish, and the probability. So let's say salmon, and also probability, let's say 20 for now. That's the only fish that we have, so anyway, this will be the only fish that we can catch. Now, of course, we can duplicate this and create, let's say, a tuna, and rename it to tuna. And let's say this will be, it will have a lower chance, so let's say 5%. And we're going to deal with the inventory item a bit later. Inside the fishing system, we're going to have 3 different lists of fish data. So these will be different water sources in our game. For example, maybe we want to have different fish in a lake, and then we also want to have different fish in the ocean and different fish in a river. So we are going to be able to catch different fish types in different places, right? And some games actually do it. So we're going to have a public list of fish data, and this will be our lake fish list. Then we're going to copy it. This will be river fish list and ocean fish list. Now I'm just showing you an option to actually separate the different fish into different water sources, but of course maybe in your game you only want to have one water source so you can catch fish, the same fish, in all of the different water sources. So you don't have to use it, but I'm also showing you the option to actually separate it. Now inside all of these lists we're going to add different kinds. So the lake may have things like cod or maybe other kinds. I'm not an expert in fish. Then the river will have salmon, the ocean will have tuna, right? Because tuna is not a river fish and a salmon is not an ocean fish. Now this is optional, so again, if you want to separate them, then you can use this. Then we also want to create an enum for the water sources. So outside of this class, we're going to have a public enum, and we're going to name it water source. So we're going to have a lake, river, and ocean. Obviously, you can add more water sources. Now, if we go back into the fishing rod script that we worked on in the previous episode, and we scroll to this part over here, to the cast rod enumerator, this coroutine, at the bottom we can see that I have this comment over here, start fish bite logic. So after we cast our rod, we want to start with the bite logic. So we're going to simply reference our fishing system instance, start fishing. Now we don't have this method yet, so we also want to supply it with the water source, because when we're going to cast the rod into a lake, we want to pass inside the lake enum, and then it will know to look for the fish that are inside the lake list. So water source, lake. And now we can generate this method. And at the moment we are hard coding this, so we're setting the lake over here, but later we're going to be able to send this water source somewhere over here. Maybe we're going to pass it inside this as well, and maybe we're going to get it over here somehow, maybe with a raycast. But for now we're just going to hard code it, so it will only look for the lake fish. And if you don't want to have multiple water sources, you can always have the same one over here, and it will only look for this one list. Now, because we generated this method, we can control click on this and it will take us back into the fishing system. So now it created this method over here. So this is basically the first part of our fishing system. It also generated this water source lake parameter, but it shouldn't be lake. It should be something generic like water source. Inside, we're going to start a coroutine that will basically start this randomness. It will look for a random number, and then it's going to loop over the list of fish, and it's going to check the probability, and then it will just pick one fish, and it's going to basically set this fish to be caught. Okay, so we're going to start a coroutine, and it's going to start a method named start or fishing coroutine. And the reason we do it in a coroutine is because we also want to add some kind of delay, and we also need to pass inside the water source. So generate method, and it's going to be a coroutine, so enumerator. So first of all, we want to have some kind of delay, because when we cast the fishing rod, we want to wait a few seconds before there is actually a bite. Of course, you can set it to be more than a few seconds. You can make it random for the player to wait some time before there is actually a bite of the fish. So we're going to yield return new wait 4 seconds. And for now, it's going to be hard-coded, something like 3 seconds. And then we're going to get the actual fish that we are going to start the mini game on, right? So we're going to have this fish data, fish, and then we're going to have a method that will generate this randomness. It's going to calculate the probability, and it's going to give us a fish from the list of this water source. So if the water source is a lake, it's going to look over all the different fish that are inside the lake list. Okay, so this should be over here. So it will simply take the water source and then say, oh, well, it's a lake, so let's look for all the fish inside the lake. And then it's going to look over the probabilities of these fish, and then it's going to just give us one of these fish. So we're going to have a method named calculate fish or calculate bite. And we're going to pass in the water source as well. And we're going to generate this method. Then we're going to check if the fish is something, then we're going to do something. And if it's not, we're going to do something else. Now, what we want to do over here is check if there is a bite, because a lot of these fishing games and a lot of these fishing systems have the option to not catch anything, right? Sometimes you catch a fish and sometimes there is no bite. So if the fish name is no bite, then it means that we are not going to catch anything. So debug log, and let's set it to log warning, no fish caught. Else, we're going to take the name of the fish is biting. So if this calculated and gave us a tuna, then it's going to say tuna is biting. But if it found a fish named no bite, then it's going to say no fish caught, and then it's going to end the actual fishing. So end fishing. And this will be a method that will finish the fishing. Let's generate this. So over here, we need to proceed with the fishing process. So again, another coroutine, start coroutine. And this will be a method named start fish struggle. And we're going to add this fish because this is the fish that we got. So it's going to receive the fish as a parameter. And we're going to generate this as well. So for now, we're just generating them, and later we're going to actually add the code. Now, if you're wondering what is no bite, this will just be a fish for when we don't want any fish to be caught. So we want to have some chance, some probability to not catch anything. So because this is a fish with a fish name no bite, we're going to create this fish as well. So over here, we're going to create a new fish data, and we're going to name it no bite, but the name should be no bite as well. And then we need to set some kind of probability. So you need to balance your game, and maybe the tuna will be 5%, the salmon will be 20%, and then there will also be a chance of 20% not to get anything, right? So you really need to calculate this and decide for yourself what are the odds. Maybe it's a lake, so there will be like a 50% chance to get nothing, and there will be a 50% chance or 40% chance to get a salmon, and then another 10% to get a tuna. Of course, you can have a lot of different fish, but you need to make sure that the probability is just the way you want it to be. But you should just know that the no bite means that there is a 50% chance that you won't get anything. Now we have these three methods over here, and we want to add the code for them. So let me just do it quickly, and then I'm going to explain what is going on inside. Okay, so let's see what is going on over here. First of all, we get the list of all available fish and set it inside this available fish list. Now, this will be a method that will simply check the water source and compare it to one of these lists. Then, after we get this list of available fish, we're going to calculate the total probability. So let's say we have tuna there. Let's say tuna with a 5% chance. And then we have a salmon with a 20% chance. And then we also have a no bite with 10% chance. So it's going to take all of these probabilities and it's going to do 5 plus 20 plus 10. It means that it's going to be 35 total probability. So it will know to generate a random number between 0 and the total probability. So 1 to 35. And we also add 1 because it always does 1 less. So we need to add 1 to it. So it will actually reach 35. So it will do 0 and 35. And it will generate a random value between 0 and 35. And that's going to do the same thing, but this time it's going to check if the random number is smaller or equals the cumulative probability, which will be exactly the same thing that happened here. But this time it will know that, for example, it gave us the random value of 17, right? And we know that tuna is 5, salmon is 20, so it will skip the tuna because it's 17 and it falls between the salmon values, right? Because tuna is basically 0 to 5, or actually 4. Then salmon is 5 to 19. And the no bite is 20 to 34. No, actually, this 20%, so 25, 24, and then 24 and 34. Okay, so these are the numbers. Okay, so these are the numbers. And then the random number will just check where it falls into. So if the random number is 17, it's not falling into this, but it's falling into this, and then it's going to know to give us the salmon. And depending on the actual percentage, it will have a higher chance to fall into a salmon, right? Because he has 20%. And it will have a very small chance to actually fall into the tuna and give us a tuna. So this is the way it works. And then it's just going to return this fish out of this entire method. And we're going to get the fish over here and set it here. And then we're going to continue with the fishing using this fish data. And of course, if it's going to fall into the no bite, then it's going to return us a no bite fish, and then we're going to end the fishing. Now we also want to generate this method over here, the get available fish, and this is just a simple switch case. Switch, and then we're going to provide it with a water source. So case source lake, return lake fish list. Then we're going to copy this 2 more times. And if it's river, then we're going to return the river list. If it's ocean, then ocean list. And we also need a default. So default return null. And that's the only thing that we do inside this method. So we basically convert the water source into the actual list of fish. And if we save this and we click on the fishing system, we can see all of these lists over here. So you simply need to drag your fish data into these lists. So if you only want to use one list, for example, the lake one, so put all the data into this lake fish. But if you want to put them in different water sources, then you can say salmon will be over here in the river fish and tuna will be in the ocean. But I'm just going to place all of them into the same one so we can actually see how it works. So everything will be inside the lake list. So let's put this and let's put this. And now we can see that we have the tuna, we have the salmon, and we have the no bite, and all of them are inside the lake fish list. And the reason that I'm using the lake fish is that this is the hard-coded list that I'm providing at the moment. So if we go back into our script, we can see over here that when we're casting the rod, we hard-coded the lake water source. Later, we're going to be able to get the source somehow from the scene and pass it inside. So as I told you, it's going to go over all of these fish and it's going to check the probability of all of them. And then it's going to simply give us one of them. Either it's not going to give us any fish or a salmon or a tuna. And of course you can add more fish over here. Now inside the fishing system, we want to add a few more fields over here. So we want to have a public bool named is there a bite, and public bool has pooled. Actually, this can be private because we don't need to see it. And now we're going to use both of them to actually end the fishing. So let's go over here, end fishing. So we're going to set both of them to is there a bite will be false, and has pooled will be false, because we're going to set them to be true in another part of the code. Now, another thing we want to do over here is actually start an event that will be sent into our fishing rod, so the fishing rod will know that the fishing is over. So start, well, actually trigger end fishing event. So we're going to generate this event in a moment. And then we also want to reach into our equip system and basically disable and enable our fishing model, because at this point the fishing model will be instantiated and the string will be attached to the bait, and when we end the fishing we want everything to go back to normal, but we don't want to just destroy the model, we want the model to just return to its regular position. So in order to do this, we need to go into our fishing system, into our equip system, and over here when we select the different quick slots, we need to make sure that it's public. The way we did it was that it's private, so it's not going to work. So just make sure that this is public, okay? The select quick slot. And then over here, we're going to reach into it, equip system instance select quick slot, and we're going to pass in number 1. So this will be the first quick slot. And later we're going to be able to actually get the quick slot that has our fishing rod, because maybe the fishing rod will not be in the first quick slot. So for now it's hard-coded, so we won't forget to actually change this. So it's going to click twice on number 1, and it means that it's going to destroy the model and then it's going to instantiate it again, and this way it will simply reset the way the model looks. If I'm instantiating the model, you can see that it's like in a default position, but then when I cast it, then the rope is in the water, and now we saw that no fish was caught, so it just came back to the original. You can also see it over here, no fish was caught. So it already works, but we just want to finish all the other methods, and then I'm going to show you what is going on. Now, because we don't know when the fishing rod will be instantiated, we can just add a reference over here and then tell it that the fishing is done, right? So we want to let the fishing rod know that the fishing is over. For example, if the end fishing method was called. And the reason we need the fishing rod to know this is because it's going to have a reference to the bait itself. So we want to destroy the bait. So for this, we're going to create an event over here. And we talked about events, so it's not something new. We're simply going to create a new event. So public static event action on finish fishing, or on end fishing or on fishing end. And then we're simply going to take this, and when we end the fishing, we're going to invoke it. So invoke. And we also want to add this thing over here just to make sure that it's not null. And now we are going to invoke it. So each time we call this method, it's going to invoke this event. And now we can go into our fishing rod and basically register and listen to this event. So for this, we're going to create two methods on enable and on destroy. And we're going to register, so fishing system on fishing end. We're going to add this method named handle fishing end. And we're going to stop listening, so we're going to place a minus over here when the fishing is over. So now let's generate this method. Let's just generate it like this. So public void handle fishing end. And the only thing it will actually do for now is destroy the bait reference. Bait reference. And of course, we still don't have the bait reference. So we're going to generate it as well. So it's just going to be a game object, bait reference. So we have the bait prefab, but we also want to have a reference to the bait. So when we instantiate the bait over here, right, we instantiate the bait and then we set the position of the bait. So we also want to save it into the bait reference. So instantiated bait will be saved inside the bait reference. And this way, when the fishing is over, we can simply destroy the bait reference and it will destroy the bait from the scene. And if you don't know what I'm talking about this bait over here. This bait over here that you see, right? So you can see that now it was destroyed because there was no fish caught. And that's why we are doing this. So now we have a reference to the bait we're destroying, and this method will be called when this method is called, because we're invoking this event. And the reason is because we're listening to this event. It is just the regular way events work. So if you don't remember, you can go and research a bit about events. We're simply subscribing. So subscribe to event and unsubscribe. Right, so we subscribe to this event and then we say that when this event is invoked, call this method. And of course we can add more methods, right? We can also say have another method like another method, right? When this one, of course, we can also listen to other events like on fishing start, but we don't have these events. We only have this one event, and that's what we want to do. Now we are going to continue with these methods that are still not done. So we have this start fish struggle. So is there a bite will be true, right? Because when the fish starts to struggle, this boolean should become true. And then we simply want to wait until the player will start pulling the rod, right? Because now the fish is biting and struggling, and we want to wait until the player clicks on the right mouse button and triggers this pulling animation. So wait until player pulls the rod. So for this, we can simply say while has pulled is false. So as long as this is false, we're going to wait and the fish will keep struggling, okay? So yield return null, so it will simply wait for the player. Now this won't happen because we also need to make it into a coroutine, enumerator, and now it will simply stay in this state and wait until the player pulls the rod. And we can do it with while has not pulled yet. But when the player does pull the rod, we want to start the minigame. So debug warning start minigame. So we're going to have some kind of method that is going to start the minigame, and this will basically give some kind of challenge to the player to be able to catch this fish. And now to actually be able to set this to be true, we also want to have a method over here, public void set has pulled will become true, and we can call this method from our fishing rod. So inside the fishing rod over here at the bottom, when we actually pull the rod and we start the pulling animation, we can say fishing system instance set has pulled. Now we also want to have a condition to the pulling. We don't want the player to just be able to pull it, right? We don't want the player to just be able to call this method, and we're calling this method over here when we right click and if we're casted. So we want to add the new condition and fishing system is there a bite. So only when there is a bite, we want to be able to enable the pulling of the rod. Only when there is a bite. Now you may already lost me and you're maybe confused with how everything works and how everything connects, but we're going to see it live at the moment. So as you can see, we have this fishing system, we have the lake, and now when we start fishing, we're going to look at the console and we're going to see what is going on. And now we're going to take out the fishing rod and we're going to toss it into the water, and we're going to wait 3 seconds, and then there should be some kind of bite. And after 3 seconds, we get the random value as 2, and then it says tuna is biting. So the reason tuna is biting is because the random value was 2, and we remember that it's because tuna is first on the list, and it has a probability of 5. So the random value of 2 falls into this category, and it's actually a very low probability, but we still got a tuna, and now the tuna is biting. And it also says that there is a bite, so it waits for us to pull the rod to start the minigame. So now if we right click, we start the pulling animation, and we can also see start minigame. So at this point, there should be some kind of UI and some kind of minigame. So we can either lose the fish or we can catch it, and then it will be added into our inventory. And then we can sell it, we can cook it, we can eat it, and that's the way it's working. So you can see it over here. We get a random value. It selects one of these. If there is no bite, it will simply end the minigame. Let's do it again. Let's see what happens if we're actually ending the fishing. 1, 2, 3. And again, it gave us a salmon because so we don't have to wait, let's make the no bite 50%, but the salmon and the tuna, let's make them very low. So there will be a very good chance for no bite. And let's open the console. Let's wait 3 seconds. And it says no fish caught because the random value was 55. And that's it. We can see that the fishing rod goes back to the default position And we can start fishing again, but no fish was caught. And again, 55, it means that over here, it knows that tuna is 5, salmon is 5, so together it's 10. So everything above 10 goes into the no bite, and that's why we got no bite. So it's a very simple system, at least when you understand it. There's nothing too crazy, there's no crazy algorithms. It simply calculates the probability and then it gives us a fish. Now we can add many more. We can have hundreds of different kinds of fish, and it will simply check the probability and give us a random fish. Now, we still need to deal with the minigame, and when the minigame is done, we're going to get this tuna, which is the inventory item, added into our inventory. So later we're going to create an inventory item for the tuna, right? It's going to have all the different things. It's going to have maybe health effects, maybe it's consumable, it's going to have its name, it's going to have its sprite, and if the mini game is completed, this will be added into our inventory. And that's the same way for the other fish. So we're going to create this mini game. It will be a very simple mini game. It's not going to be too complicated, but I'm just going to show you how you can do it and where to do it. And then you can maybe add your own mini game. You can add something different if you want to. But anyway, we're going to do this in the next episode. So thank you for watching. Please subscribe. Please leave a like. And if you have any questions, if something is not working, please let me know in the comments. And I'll see you next time.